Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3. Big day on the show. Big guest. That's right. Clemson coach Dabo Swinney joins us, and Ari, he turned some things back on you. It was very interesting.
Yeah, I guess I'm not a GM. I don't know. We'll see. Like the thing that I want to get into about this notion of turning it around on me, we want to talk about after, because like I do have some thoughts on that of like, I don't want to blow it. So I don't want to like tell people before he says what he's going to say. So let them talk, see it. And then
teasing it, Ari. I'm teasing it. Yes.
But I'm just excited, because I want to, you're telling people on Twitter, he turned the tables on me and stuff. It's like, you know how I am. I'm like a rabid dog in the corner when you do that to me. I'm like foaming at the mouth, ready to talk about it. But no, I thought it was an incredible interview. And, the thing that I'll say about Dabo Swinney is I don't know what it is, but there is something divisive about him, right? Yes. Just to the general public. And I don't know if it's the leaning into faith. I don't know if it's his eccentric personality. I don't know if it's just that Clemson's been very good. But he does rub a lot of people the wrong way. And the thing that I hope people will see through this interview is that he's just a good dude. And it was really cool to have him on. He gave us more time than we asked for. And
way more. Yeah.
He's just, am I saying that right? Like, he's just a good dude.
Well, I think you're right about the divisive part. And I think the reasons you gave are all reasons, because different people will have different reasons. But I think one of the issues with Dabo is that if you experience Dabo in sound bites, you don't get the entire picture. And I think that's true of a lot of people, but especially true of him, because I think he'll tell you he tends to be a little bit long-winded. Like, he has these press conferences that'll go for an hour just because he just doesn't stop talking. And if you get the whole picture, I think you see it a little bit differently than if you just see a soundbite of Dabo said this about the transfer portal or Dabo said this about NIL. I think when you hear it all together, and you'll hear it with him today, his vision for the program hasn't really changed much, but it's working. It has worked, and he believes it's going to continue to work. Now, we will find out if it will continue to work. You and I have been pretty bullish on Clemson this year. We were not so bullish on Clemson going into last year. We're very bullish on them this year. If what we think is going to happen happens, he's probably going to be proven right here. And so that's the part that I find interesting, is that he's doubled down on all this stuff. Other programs have changed a lot more. And either he's going to be right or they're going to be right. And we're going to find out. But I think it's really interesting how he's handled all this.
But the thing that you need to understand about this situation is, in order for him to be right, I don't think they have to go win the ACC. I think in order for him to be right, they have to show, I don't even know if they have to win, but they have to show unequivocally that they can go toe-to-toe with the best team in the country. Correct. That's what people have been questioning. Nobody's ever said, and I've been as critical of the man as anybody. I've never said that I think Clemson stinks in the sense of like their team's not good at all. I know that their team is still better than 85% of the other teams out there. The question is and remains, can Clemson win or be good enough to win another national title doing it this way? I know they're good enough to win the ACC. We watched a team last year that, wasn't nearly as good as some of the best Clemson teams that they've had in the past win the ACC, even with some pretty good teams in it last year. Like, I know they're good enough to win the ACC. What I don't know is if they're good enough to go beat peak Georgia or peak Ohio State, which they've done in their past. So like that to me is the bar there. It's not whether or not you can rattle off more ACC championships. So not taking away the accomplishment, winning 8 out of the last 10 years, which he said, I think 9 times in the interview, is a really good accomplishment. But when you feed your fan base elite and then you give them very good, they want elite. You know what I mean?
Right. And we suspect elite is coming back. That's based on the way the roster's gone and what we saw at the end of last year. So we'll find out. But great conversation with a guy who has accomplished more than almost any, or maybe he's accomplished more than any other coach working. I think he and Kirby probably are pretty neck and neck for that. But fascinating conversation. Here is Dabo Swinney. Honored to be joined by the head coach at Clemson, Dabo Swinney. We got 2 national championship trophies over the shoulder. This is a beautiful office, coach.
You.
I was going to wait until later, but I was thinking about this. Your post 2010 press conference. So you guys have just gone 6-7.
Yep.
And you go, the next decade of Clemson football is going to be the best one ever. Like, do you have any stock tips? Do you have anything else? Any other bold predictions that we can piggyback on that one from?
Yeah, we haven't even come close to the best years at Clemson. So and I think that it wasn't only the best decade at Clemson, it was the 3rd best decade in the history of college football. And even in these first 5 years of this decade, we're ahead of that pace. So I know we've supposedly hadn't been very good, but these past 5 years, but we're ahead of the pace that we were in the teens. And so I'm excited about where we are and what's to come.
Dabo, I don't know if you know this about me, but you got me into trouble on the Paul Feinbaum show because we had to do this thing at the Athletic where we ranked the Mount Rushmore of coaches, and I put you on mine. And the reason why I put you on mine, Coach, because you've done something at Clemson that nobody else has done, which has taken a program that was proud and successful, and you turned it into a juggernaut, right? And there aren't very many other coaches who can claim that during this modern era. And my question to you is, with the changing landscape in college football, the way it's different now, how you going about assembling a roster is changing, players are changing, compensation's changing. What would your advice be to another coach taking over a place like 2010 Clemson and turning it into what you did now? Like, if your starting point was now, what would your advice be?
It'd be the exact same as it was when I got this job, and that is, what's your purpose? I think you got two ways to be successful, I believe. I think one is you can do what everybody else does and just try to outwork them, be smarter than them or whatever, or always be reactive to what they do, or you can be unique and you can be different. And when I got this job at Clemson, I really feel like Clemson is unique and different. If we were going to be successful, we were going to have to do it in a unique way. And that's what we've done. And we've been purpose-driven for going on 17 years, and that purpose hasn't changed. And if you're purpose-driven, then the results should reflect that after 16 years. And that's what our results are. The number one thing in our program is graduation. It always has been. We got the highest graduation rate in America, 394 seniors, 389 graduates. We just posted the highest graduation success rate that's been posted in 20 years in college football. We also have the highest retention rates in the country the past couple of years in this crazy free agent world. So we've just stayed focused on the purpose, and we've never compromised, what's maybe best in the moment. We've never compromised what's best for the long-term health of our program, of our organization, and more importantly, what's best for these young people that God puts in front of us. So, that's really, my advice. I mean, what's your purpose? What are you about? And you got to have some conviction in who you are and the way you do it. And it is a blessing. I mean, Clemson is, when I got this job, we hadn't won 10 games in 20 years. We hadn't won the ACC, and that was an 8 to 10 team league. We hadn't won the league in 20 years. We've won it 9 times now. We've played for it 10. We've been to 7 playoffs in the past 10 years. We've won our league 8 out of the last 10 years. We got the highest graduation rate in the country. We've never had a number 1 recruiting class. We always average about 13 every year. That's kind of where we are in my 16 years. But now that Nick Saban's gone, we've won more games than anybody the last 16 years. Got the most draft picks, most first-round picks, most championships, but the highest graduation rate and the highest retention. So I think the way we've done it has been unique. It's been different. And a lot of people don't understand Clemson. They don't understand our purpose. But we've never compromised what's best for the long-term health of this organization and for these young people for maybe what's best in a moment.
Well, and we've talked about that, and obviously everybody has an opinion on how you handle the transfer portal. I thought you you broke it down really well because it changed my mind on it when I heard you talking to Roddy Jones about it at Amelia Island last year, where you explained where you were coming from with the way you handled the portal. And it was interesting because I hadn't thought of it that way, but basically you said retention's our biggest thing. And if we're going to bring somebody in, we can't mess up the guys that we've poured into. So you take 3 transfers this year, and they had their press conferences last night. I heard Will Helt talking about, I couldn't even believe Clemson was recruiting me. I didn't think they took transfers. But how did you decide how you were going to venture into that and still keep the culture that you've clearly worked very hard to create?
Yeah, I mean, again, we just do what's best for Clemson. We've always done that year in and year out, regardless of what that is. And as the portal has come about. So again, you can't have the highest graduation rate in America, and you can't be top in the country in retention, in this crazy free agent world, and go sign 1 million portal guys. So something's got to give somewhere. We're not against the portal. We've used the portal 3 out of the last 4 years. We've used the portal. We've just signed what we need. The portal is a great tool. And again, everybody just likes to make up their own stories and narratives, and they like to get a bunch of clicks and all that. But, in the meantime, we just keep winning. And that's we just go on about our business. Most people don't understand our program. So it's a lot of wasted time trying to explain it. But everybody has to use the portal in today's era in some form or fashion, because if a kid leaves in the spring portal, you can't get a high school kid in May. So we just haven't had, if you look at our retention, we're in the bottom in the country, like in fewest players leaving our program. It's not that we don't have some guys leave, but fewest players. And we are getting our top picks in high school. So like this past year, everybody wants me to go get this portal receiver. I went and got Wesco and TJ Moore. I think they're pretty good. Well, guess what? They're here for more than 1 year. They're going to be here for a while. I'm not against the portal. Everybody wanted me to fire Cade Klubnik, but we forget it's a developmental game. And now Cade Klubnik's, he's a projected Heisman guy. Kids get better. And so I think you have to evaluate well, you got to develop well, and you have to retain well. And that's been our formula here. And we've been able to recruit who we think, we're not always right, but who we think are the best fits and the best high school kids are. That's been our approach. That's been our philosophy. Now, this past year, we had 2 high school kids, or one in particular. We were going to take 2 defensive ends, and we had a kid that decided he didn't want to come to Clemson a couple weeks before signing day. So he goes. Well, recruiting is over. There's no high school kid to get. There isn't a high school kid to get. So, all right, I'm like, all right, well, let's go find who the best. Let me look at all the DNs. And I looked at all the DNs in the portal, and I said, that's the guy, Will Helt. So I called Will Helt up, and I said, hey, man, here we go. And we went and got – so our philosophy is not any different whether we're recruiting the portal or we're recruiting a high school kid. Our philosophy, our evaluation, how we go about it is exactly the same. So I'm not against it. We just use it when we need to. And I've also said many times, if I left today and took a job, half the team would probably leave. So you can't go sign 40 high school kids. I don't judge other people. Everybody's situation is different. But again, everybody wants me to be like everybody else. And again, we've been to 7 playoffs in 10 years. We haven't been 10 out of 10, but I don't think hardly, maybe Alabama's been 7 out of 10, and we've won this league 8 out of 10 years. And we're graduating our kids at the highest rate in all of college football. 13 out of the last 14 years, we've been top 10 in the country, Clemson, Duke, and Northwestern academically. So we just stay focused on the purpose. We stay focused on the way we do things, why we do it that way. We have fun. I love my players. And, we just kind of own our business, man. And again, we're not going to win the national championship every year. And if we're going to be judged by that, I think we're 5th in the country in wins in the last 5 years. And no, we haven't won the national championship. But how many people have? Number one, I think, but all those 5, I think, have all played for it. So I think you got to be consistent before you can be anything else. And that's what we've always focused on, not being a up and down program, being a program that is consistently performing at a championship caliber level on and off the field. And that's who we are.
Dabo, I began this discussion telling you about how I put you on my Mount Rushmore, but this is also an honesty podcast. Like we are true to ourselves, and I have to tell you that
you took me off. You cut me off of it.
No, you're still on.
Oh, I'm on there. Okay, good.
I have been at times very critical of your roster building. Okay. And maybe I am one of the people who doesn't understand Clemson, but I wanted to ask you, Dabo, have you ever, during this 3-year period of evolution, had any moments to yourself, maybe in your office or at home? I do a lot of my thinking in the shower, of like, is what we're doing still going to work? Have you ever been nervous about that or thought second of like, well, you've got kids in your program, but other teams are taking players who are improvements in the portal, even if they don't need them, and accentuating the roster in a way that Clemson hasn't done yet. Like, have you ever had any honest moments of like, maybe we need a waiver, maybe we need to do something different, or have you stayed tried and true to yourself and never been concerned about your process?
No, I'm not concerned about that at all. I have total conviction in how we go about our business here. Does that mean I make all the right decisions? No. We're all human, and we all, make mistakes, and we don't always make the right decisions all the time. But hopefully we've made a lot more good ones than bad ones, over the past 16 plus years. So just always work to get better. You're always trying to get better. But again, my North Star is the purpose of this program. And that's it. Not what other people are doing. I've never tried to live from the outside in and compare. I've always focused on building my life and building this program from the inside out. And that's what we do. And again, there's a lot of decisions that you have to make, and you're always evaluating yourself and trying to get better. But I don't sit around and worry. And we've won our league 8 out of 10 years, and we've been to 7 playoffs in 10 years. So I think I don't think there's another program in the country that can say that. So I think, and then we have the highest graduation rate. So I think, honestly, I've never tried to, and that went from the time I got this job. In the very first board meeting I went to, and one of the board members said, "Hey, we want to be like this school and this school and this school, and we want to be great academically and athletically." My message has always been, well, I don't want to be like that. I want for them to want to be like Clemson. That has not changed. We just stay focused on being great where our feet are, fulfilling the purpose that we have. We have a ton of fun here. That's why our retention is so high. I've got 24 former players on this staff that I get to do life with every single day. Got an awesome group of people. And again, from time to time, if you make a mistake or you have to make a change, that's part of life. That's part of the business. But as far as how we build our roster, and again, I don't have a problem with people having opinions, and that's just comes with it. You sign up for this job, other people have opinions, and I respect other people's opinions. But I'm not driven by other people's opinions, other people's criticism, other people's expectations. I'm driven by the purpose of this program, and I'm driven, through what I believe is, doing what's right for the 30-year-old version of these kids.
One of the changes you did have to make is that you changed defensive coordinators this year. You bring in Tom Allen, who's he was at Penn State, but he was a head coach at Indiana. I'm curious because I remember when that hire got announced, I thought, oh my gosh, that is the perfect guy to work with Dabo, because Tom is, you guys you're very out front with your faith, but also both of you, if you talk to your players, like nice up front, but they'll get you if there's an edge to be gained. And Tom's whole philosophy at Indiana was love each other, and that very similar to that got you to thinking that Tom's the right guy for this job.
Yeah. So, these are tough decisions. And when I made a decision to make a change, and just kind of did my research, first of all, we'd never really met, maybe once in passing somewhere, but he called me when I think he was an interim, I believe, at Indiana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He called me during that time, and then reached out a few times over his tenure as a head coach. And so I always liked him just from, watching him from afar and knew a little bit about him. But, when I started kind of doing my research, and I had a lot of people to look at and consider, and got it down to about 10 or 12 guys. And then I got it down to 5 or 6, and then I got it down to 3, and just unbelievable candidates. And, I just felt like, he's a great leader of people, a great leader of men. And, I really felt like he was the dynamic leader I needed in the room, not just for the players, but also for the coaches, especially with me being an offensive guy. I just felt like, and I loved his background. I love the fact that he was a very successful high school coach as well. And, all things just kept coming back to him. And, but then I had to kind of wait. But within about the first hour, or 10 minutes of our hour conversation, I knew, like, okay, this is the guy, and he's a great fit, and it's been awesome. I mean, he is a great fit. We really align in a lot of things, and so it was right timing, right fit, and all worked out. So he's done an awesome job. To this point, obviously we're going to open up with LSU, so it'll be we'll find out then. But been off to a good start this spring.
Dabo, I think a lot of people, look at your roster. They see the evolution of Cade, Klubnik's game. They see the receivers you mentioned, and the defensive line that you guys have might be the best in the country. There's a lot of things to like about your roster. Some pretty high expectations when heading into spring now, and finally getting this team on the field and getting a feel for who they are. Do you sense that this team has something in it that can reach some of the heights that are represented in those 2 trophies behind you?
Yeah, I mean, those are hard. Those are hard. Like I said, we've won 3 of them in 130 years. So those things are hard to get, and for anybody. But I think that this is a team that has a chance to compete for this league, and I think if you can compete for your league, you have an opportunity beyond that, and that's where it always starts for us. It's just taking them one at a time, and I think. We do have a proven quarterback. That's always exciting when you have a guy that's, you can't just give a guy experience. But this kid really is the epitome of Clemson, just believes in everything. That's why he came here, and just has continued to develop. So he's got a ton of experience. He's got a lot of confidence to go with it. I think the one thing about this team that's maybe a little different from the last couple of years is, they've seen the top of the mountain, getting back to the playoffs, and they've seen it and didn't quite get there, but they've got a clear vision, I think, and a clear understanding of what it takes. We got great leadership. We lost 1 defensive lineman. We lost 1 offensive lineman. Both those guys will probably get drafted here. We lost 1 backer and 1 safety. They'll get drafted. We lost 1 tight end and 1 running back. They'll get drafted. Other than that, everybody's back. And we added a great signing class. I think our last, probably back to 22, we've really, I think, done a nice job with our recruiting classes. And we've kind of built, and I think you've seen that. I mean, we've, again, won the league 2 out of the last 3 years, 8 out of the last 10 years. Getting back to the playoffs was big this year from an experience standpoint for our team. But we're going to be led in the trenches on both sides. We've got a lot of guys back up front. I think we've got really good skill, but most importantly, we got an outstanding quarterback. And I think we got a really good backup quarterback too in CV. So, we've got the ingredients. We got a kicker who can make a game-winning kick. So we've got good experience. We've got the right ingredients, but man, it's just a lot of work to do. And you got to show up every week, show up every day. We got to finish strong these next couple weeks in spring. Have a great summer. You always got to get a little lucky with your help. There's a lot that goes into it. But I like our team. I think we're a team that's got a chance, and that's all you can ask for. And you got to go take advantage of each and every opportunity.
And you got to ask about crazy legs. The crazy legs.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We realized last year how well Cade runs. I'm assuming you guys knew that all along. Where were you hiding that? I mean, this guy's like the next Michael Vick.
Yeah, well,
80-yard runs to the house, man.
Yeah, well, he just had never really had to do that, and we saw that. He was a track kid in high school. Like, this dude can move, And we know how fast he is. I mean, he's fast, but he wasn't a confident runner. And he just hadn't really done it a whole lot. And he really never really had to. He never lost a game in high school. And that was also a part of his journey. His sophomore, junior, senior year, he won 3 state championships. He never lost a game. Didn't lose a game. And so I think the closest game he had was 14 points. So, that was a part of his development as well. Like, so he comes in here and then he goes to the Elite 11. He wins the Elite 11. He comes to Clemson. He's the backup. He's, physically a little behind and getting there. And then all of a sudden we put him in the ACC championship his freshman year. He wins the MVP. Like life is good, right? Like he's got all this great stuff. Well, then his first year as a starter, really the first time that he's had football adversity in his life, turning the ball over, ball handling, making some interceptions, taking sacks, TFLs. And so we lost some close games, some gut wrenchers, all of a sudden, instead of how great you are, here comes the criticism, here comes the noise. Well, how are you going to grow through that? And it's just been awesome to see him come back through the other side of that. And he's so much better because all of us grow from struggle. All of us grow stronger from strain, from having some adversity in our life, if we're made of the right stuff. And that's what he's been able to do. And it's been awesome. But that was a huge, like his first year, it would drive me crazy. Like, there were so many times that it's 2nd and 10. He could have easily made it 3rd and 4. But instead, he's standing there holding the ball. Now it's 3rd and 10, and just, he could have, it's 2nd and 10, he could have made it 3rd and 4. And now it's 3rd and 10 because he wouldn't run. He just wasn't comfortable. So that was a huge part of challenging him last year. And really the end of his first year as a starter in 23, you started to see that. You started to see him, especially that game-winning drive in the bowl game against Kentucky. He had to use his legs, and he started gaining some confidence. And the game has slowed down. He really understands coverages. He knows when that the defense is exposed, when his legs can really hurt people. So, and then obviously we've made him a runner too. We've taken advantage as he's gotten physically a little bit more put together, and his confidence has grown. We have asked him to run in some critical situations. And so his confidence is sky high. He knows his legs. He can beat people with his legs, his mind, his heart, and his arm. And so, that's going to serve him well and all of us well as we go into this next season.
This is one I'm very excited about. We close these interviews with the same question. And so you're one I'm fascinated to hear the answer to this. So Dabo Swinney, if you got one or several, it's either way. What are your basic rules for life, or what is your one rule for life?
Oh man. Well, my one rule for life is to build your life on a foundation of faith. That's just my one rule for life. If you're going to ask me that, I think to not take advantage of our platform here. I'm sure there's 10 million people watching this. I need to
at least
I need to make sure that I say that. I think so many times in life we try to build our life on a foundation that just it's not stable. Whether it's your job, your family, your bank account, it's a football, it's your favorite team, whatever. I think sooner or later life brings us all to our knees, and we're going to have a circumstance that, man, if you don't have faith, you can get washed out to sea. And I think you need to be anchored and build your life on a strong foundation of faith. That's kind of the first thing I would say. And then I think as a football coach, we all need good fundamentals. For me, my fundamentals of life have always been to keep my eyes on the Lord in the good and bad. Whether things are great, whether things are terrible, just keep my eyes locked in and focused on Christ. And that's how you don't get distracted by all the things that are going on. And that's how you keep perspective in life. So keep your eyes on the Lord. You got to believe. You got to believe in yourself. You have to believe in God's plan for your life. And then you can't ever quit. When the adversity comes, when success comes, you can't quit. You got to continue to apply those fundamentals for life. So that's kind of what I would tell you. And then just another big picture thing for me, I've always said that, and I love I don't know who said it, but it's kind of a philosophy for me is, you know, you don't stop playing because you grow old. You grow old because you stop playing. Like, man, you got to keep moving, right? If you rest, you rust. Like, you got to keep moving. All right. That's just a mentality that I think will serve everybody well. And so that's a few things. I could give you a few more if you want them. Another thing I'd tell you is, you know, nobody's greatness isn't your destiny. It's your decision. And like, you got to decide every day, every single day, you know, is the glass half full or half empty? And growth follows belief. So you're going to grow in whatever direction your beliefs are, you know? And so, you know, that's just a few things. And again,
one of my favorites that I've heard you say a bunch of times, and I remember I talked to you about this, I think it was the 10-year anniversary of you being the interim coach at Clemson, which was just like, I'm fascinated by that entire 3-month span. But you said grow where you're planted, and that's something you've said a lot over the course of your life. But I always find, you know, you talk to people and they're like, well, you know, if only this had happened, or if I was here, or if I'd gotten this job. Like, the grow where you're planted part of it is something that I don't know. I don't think I realized till later in life, but that's, if you can accept that and understand that early, it feels like it solves a lot of problems.
You just got to bloom where you're planted. That's what I always say. Just be great where your feet are. So many people are so focused on, you know, other people's grass, you know, and, you know, and they always, you know, like if you're counting somebody else's sprinkles on their ice cream cone, yours is going to melt. Like, just be great where your feet are, man. Like, have a lifestyle of now. None of us are promised tomorrow. None of us, next week, next month, but we're so burdened by unborn tomorrows. We're so burdened by things that, may never happen. And we choose fear over faith. Instead of just having a lifestyle of now, you know, having the right perspective, and because, again, and we can't do anything about yesterday. Like, there's no hope for a better yesterday. We can't do anything about that. So just bloom where you're planted, man. Just right here, right now, be engaged, be present. And, you know, I think that's how you have happiness in your life. You have to, that's just a mindset, you know, that you have to have. And it's, if you're great at what you're doing, somebody's going to notice that. Like,
that would be a heck of a philosophy professor. I don't know if this football thing.
Well,
somebody's going to notice.
When are you writing the book? When are you writing the book?
I've already written the book. I've lived it. I've already written it. I've just, you know, somebody can put it together if they want.
We'll do it. 40%.
You drive a hard bar. I've actually ghostwritten a couple. You don't get 20%. Already, so sorry.
You're going to start high. That's another rule for life. When negotiating, start high.
Start high, you know.
Well,
another one.
When you're ready.
One of my favorites. You don't get what you expect. You get what you inspect. All right. We expect our kids to clean their room, but if you don't go up there and inspect it every now and then, how do you know?
You know what would be great? And I don't know if all of these are Dabo originals or not. But you know those like calendars like this that are like on your desk where you like rip the sheet off every day, and then like
Daboism a day.
Daboism a day, because it's like, what was the one what was the one that ended with rust? Because it made me want to go to the gym.
If you rep, you rust. You need to go to the gym.
Rust.
You know what I'm about to do? You know what I'm doing in 20 minutes? I'm going down and I'm playing noon basketball. All right.
You know you're in.
You know who I'm covering? I'm locking Spiller down because I'm his kryptonite. I'm gonna lock him down today.
Dabo, you might have met him, but the dude that does the algorithm for all the basketball gambling plays in your league. His name is Tyler Shoemaker, and I follow all of his plays, and he plays in your league.
In my men's league?
Yeah, his team is Duck Dynasty. I don't know if you've played these people, but he's played against you, and he said that he's gonna meet you at the board. So you got to go up strong, okay?
The locking down CJ Spiller thing is amazing to me because
I am his kryptonite. I really am, and so I try to always be on the opposite team of him, and I take him. So yeah, we got a big game today at noon. You know, again, you got to keep playing, man. You got to keep moving. You know, you just gotta live your life one day at a time. You know, I will do what I can while I can, so that when I cannot, I will not wish that I would have when I could have. Right? Like right now.
Here
right
we go
now.
again.
Right
it's
now.
Amazing.
What you gonna do today? What you gonna do today?
Go lock down CJ Spiller. Tell him I said hi, and I'm still surprised because I was in the gym at Union County High School when he put the Tiger Paw hat on, and we went over to interview him.
Oh,
and I said,
there.
I said,
wow.
I said, well, what caused you to pick Clemson? And he said, well, it was the receivers coach who's my lead recruiter. He was the one that really did. Dabo Swinney. I said, can you spell that for me?
Who? What was that?
It was 2006. Who knew?
We were doing a series a few years ago. I know you have to go, Dabo. Sorry, but we were doing a series a few years ago.
You said you were criticizing my roster. So who do you not like? Who do you want me to get rid of?
No. It wasn't individual play.
That's what I tell them. I'm like, guys, when they say they want me to use this portal, they want me. What they're really saying is they don't believe in you. They want me to get rid of you. That's what they're really saying. So I want to know, like, who you want me to get rid of?
Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to get your number. I'm going to call Jim Nagy, and I'm going to figure out what they're paying him, and then I'm going to take 120% of whatever he's getting. I'll move to Clemson with my family. And then
we'll negotiating.
Then we'll go through it.
You guys are great, man.
I wanted to tell you, Dabo, one last thing. I was doing a series where I was asking coaches what their biggest recruiting regret was. And I got to Urban Meyer, and his was CJ Spiller. So you can tell him that when you go play basketball with him.
CJ Spiller twice.
Yeah.
I've got Urban on the wall down. So we have this quote wall in the building. Like anytime somebody says something like we put them on the wall. And so we've got Urban kind of talking a little bit about that part of it. When he came in here, because he'd never been here. So he's a part of the building now, as is 4 or 5 other coaches that have made some great comments, like Coach Saban.
I will be on that wall one day. I promise you that.
Coach Saban had a great quote. He said, "This is why you come to Alabama, to play teams like Clemson." That was a keeper. Like that.
Well, go lock down CJ Spiller, as Urban Meyer couldn't do the first time or the second time.
Or the second time, yeah.
I don't. There's always kids. To answer your question, there's always kids like you miss out on.
Well, who's yours?
I mean, like, honestly, I go back to Alabama and missed out on Jericho Cotchery. But everybody missed out on him. He ended up going to NC State. But there's always some guys like that. But at the end of the day, man, I don't live my life with regret. I really don't. I believe that God never says oops. I believe God never says my bad. Even when we screw up, even when we make mistakes, I think it's all Romans 8:28. All things work together for good, even the things we don't like. And I believe that. So I don't really spend a lot of time with my eyes in the rearview mirror, living with regret. I just believe, hey, God's will's done. And, if we just keep our eyes on him and continue to believe and we don't quit, that, in the end, we're going to live a great life.
Appreciate it, Coach. Thank you so much.
That was awesome. Thanks so
much.
much.
Man, you guys are great.
Good luck on the court.
Can't wait to find out. We do need to find out how the basketball game went. We need to find out if CJ Spiller was locked down or if CJ Spiller dropped 20 on Dabo's head.
He can't move like he used to.
All right, so the CJ Spiller story. Let's. I think I've told that on the old show, but it's a crazy story. So here's what happened there, and it's one of those deals where you're just doing your job and you don't actually want to become part of the story, but you can't help it sometimes. So I'm covering Florida for the Tampa Tribune, and this is at the end of the 2006 season. So I'll take you to December 2006. I was covering a practice. Florida's getting ready to play Ohio State in the national championship game, and they're practicing back in Gainesville in December. And I see a 1991 Honda Civic and the old Florida license plates used to tell you what county they were from. And so it's got a Clemson Tiger Paw sticker on the back, and it's a Union County license plate. And Union County is one county north of Alachua County where Gainesville is. So it's very close. But I'm like, that has to be CJ Spiller. I don't know who else that could be. Now, I remember later that he did have a teammate that went to Clemson as well. So it could have been, I guess it could have been that guy, but pretty sure it was CJ Spiller. And I'm like, what's he doing in the parking lot by the Florida practice field right now? And so obviously I'm doing my job and talking to people over the next few weeks. And I believe it was the day after Florida beat Ohio State for the national title. I get word that CJ Spiller's coming to Florida, that he's decided he's going to transfer from Clemson to Florida. And so this is, back in the Stone Age, he would have had to sit out 2007, but he would have been on the 2008 Florida team and he would have been able to play. So like with Tebow and Percy Harvin and all those people.
God, could you imagine?
It would have been unreal. And Florida was very confident that they had him. So I had CJ's cell number. So I called it and he answers. And if you've never talked to CJ Spiller, he's the nicest guy in the world. And he'll just talk to anybody. And I said, hi, I'm Andy Staples. I cover Florida for the Tampa Tribune. I've heard that you may be transferring to Florida. And he's like, yeah, well, I'm going back up to Clemson to get my stuff right now. And so I write a story and it comes out on the website. And the rest of the story comes from Tommy Bowden, who was the head coach at Clemson before Dabo Swinney. And Dabo was Tommy Bowden's receivers coach and recruiting coordinator. And so when I get the SI job in 2008, I go up to Clemson to do a preseason story. And I tell Tommy Bowden this story and he goes, well, I need to thank you then because we didn't know about that. And we read the story and we made sure that we got him in the room and said, here's why you should stay. And we want you here. And he ends up staying. And it changes the course of Clemson history because like if CJ Spiller's not on that 2008 Clemson team, so Tommy Bowden gets fired. Also, great rule for life. You ready? This is Tommy Bowden gave me this rule for life. You ready?
Yep.
Never lose to Wake Forest on a Thursday night.
That's a good rule for life.
It's a great rule for life. That was the end of the Tommy Bowden era. So Dabo's got the interim job. He's trying to hold on to it. There's not like a set, you've got to win this many games for him to get it. But you talk to guys who were on that staff and they'll tell you, like, if they'd have lost to Boston College, they were pretty sure they were out and they would have just done a national search and gone and got somebody else. And CJ Spiller had a kickoff return against Boston College that set them up to win that game. And if CJ Spiller's on that team, like, that doesn't happen. Dabo doesn't happen the way it I think Dabo would have found his way to becoming a head coach, but it wouldn't have happened the way it happened. And it's just crazy how all that stuff.
So you're the most important figure in Clemson history?
I don't think so.
Sounds like it to me.
Tommy still had to close him and get him to stay. Like, that's a pretty tough gig.
It's kind of like when you have an argument with your wife on like who's more responsible for your kid. They carried it, you provided the seed, like who's more important. Like you were a part of it. You know what I mean? Is that a little too much for the show? I don't know. Like
I hope you haven't actually had that argument. I suspect you have, but I hope you haven't.
Women, I think, do, but my wife does. Is she reminds me periodically that she carried our child.
Yeah, and birthed your child.
Yeah,
which is difficult no matter how it happened.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But
Let's not forget where she originated from. That's all.
I mean, you helped.
Yeah,
but you enjoyed that part.
Yeah.
Your role in that was way more fun than her role in it.
Yeah, my role in it was a blast, but like literally, but I don't know. She did the bulk of the heavy lifting, but without.
So I'm gonna give Dabo Swinney and Tommy Bowden the credit on this.
But you were the seed that planted it.
Yeah, I also want no credit for that because that's one of those things where you don't want to be part of the story. Like, I'm just doing my job. I've been told this is going to happen. I call the person he says this is going to happen and write the story. So
yeah, and maybe if you wouldn't have, somebody else would have. But like that.
Listen, I was the first person to call him. There were probably 3 more coming. That once he probably hung up with me, he's like, "Oh crap, what have I done?" and they didn't talk to him.
That was back in the day when that was how recruiting stuff happened. Like, I mean, all of us have those recruiting stories of like the kid picked up, like, you know, like,
yeah, it's funny because we joke now, like I have teenagers, they don't like to use their phones as phones, but teenagers never like to use their phones as phones.
No,
even before text messaging was prevalent, they didn't want to use their phones as phones.
You don't ever just get a phone call out of the blue and look down at it and just go, oh, God. I do all the time. Yep. You know that shirt or that meme or that thing that they say online, you know, this meeting could have been an email. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I feel like this phone call could have been a text, you know.
Always.
But maybe because I'm a millennial. Are you a millennial?
No, I am Generation X.
Okay, I'm a millennial, so maybe I'm like half and half, where it's like, yeah, I do, like, as a reporter, want to talk to people when with the opportunity, but like when my friend calls me out of the blue, it's just like, dude, what do you want? Then it's not because I don't want to hear from them, but like, it's just like sometimes I just want to.
I have to be in the mood because my wife will call me and she'll be like, "You're not saying anything," and like, I didn't initiate the phone call.
Yeah,
I'm not the one that was intending to provide information to the other person, and it's like, oh yeah, no. Normally I'm a pretty talkative person, but sometimes I do shows all day, and I'm just like, I don't feel like.
Yeah, but I'm a big. I'll talk on the phone in the car if I'm driving. That's when I.
Yeah, exactly.
But I FaceTime.
Zach in the chat, they like FaceTime. Zoomers hate phone calls, though. This is true. Now, interesting story about that. You know who also likes FaceTime is Dabo Swinney. So Will Helt, the defensive end from Purdue who transferred to Clemson, he did a press conference this week, and he was talking about his recruitment. And, he goes into the portal. Obviously, he's getting a lot of interest. I think LSU and Texas A&M were other schools that he'd scheduled visits to. But, like, he gets a call from Chris Rumph, who's Clemson's defensive line coach. And they chat for a few minutes. And then Chris Rumph says, yes, we're very interested. And, like, an hour later, a number pops up that Will Helt doesn't recognize, and it's FaceTime call, and it's Dabo Swinney. And he's like, oh, I guess they are taking transfers now. So there you go. And you heard Dabo in the interview talking about getting Will Helt. That's a pretty big get because they hadn't hired Tom Allen yet. And remember, they had to start Peter Woods at defensive end for 7 games last year just to get the best 4 defensive linemen on the field. And that was on them. Like, it's interesting because Dabo talks about, they only took 3 transfers. They only lost 5 people to the transfer portal. Last year, they lost 11 and they took 0. So I think their depth is going to be better by quite a bit this year.
Yeah. Also, too, like Will Helt might be one of the best edge rushers in the country by the time this is all said and done, too. He's a monster. Think about Purdue was 1-11 last year, but had Will Helt and Dylan Thieneman on that defense. Yeah, and they also had Nick Scorton the year before, and he was a pretty important piece last year at A&M. So, like, it's like Purdue's had some edge rushers. But it's like, it is interesting, too. It's like if you're going to use the portal sparingly, the way that Clemson is, when you do use it and you hit a home run, that's probably going to be a good thing, right? Like, I think that the anticipation is that they'll have the best defensive line in the country, and and that's why I've been so high on A&M in the past. It's like, well, I don't know about everything, but like A&M has one of the best defensive lines in the country. I can get on board with them being good. But then you had the best defensive line in the country to Cade Klubnik and those 2 receivers and experienced
three
line.
Receivers. TJ Moore, Wesco, and Antonio Williams. Like, they were all good.
They got dudes at very important positions. Then, of course, Sammy Brown, right? Like, who was one of the best freshman linebackers in the country a year ago. So, like, when you look at the roster, they do seem like a pretty trendy pick to run deep into this thing next year.
So, somebody who understands Clemson very well told me that Dabo may have gotten some inspiration from watching Brad Brownell, who's their basketball coach, who has had to take quite a few transfers. But has been successful at finding transfers that fit the culture that he wants in his program. And Clemson, the ACC's down in basketball this year, but Clemson's been really good. They're a lock to make the NCAA tournament. Like, they're good. And it feels like that Clemson, with the dipping the toe in the transfer portal in football, like, they did find people who fit. Like, the linebacker they got from Alabama, like, that was an easy one. He was Peter Woods' high school teammate. Like, Peter Woods called him the second he found out he was going to the portal, like, where you're going. And then Will Helt, he had a chance to go to Texas A&M. He had a chance to go to LSU. So we're talking about a guy who was getting certainly competitive NIL offers as well. And I'm sure Clemson offered a competitive deal too. But here's what Will Helt said the other day. And remember, Will Helt has been on a team that has won 5 games in the past 2 years. No one's hungrier for a win than I am. 5 games in the last 2 years, 1 game last year. I'm salivating to get those victories. This is a guy who clearly being able to play for a championship, being able to win games is a huge deal to him.
Yeah. And like, I don't think that people appreciate how important just a win is to a lot of people in the sport too. It's like we spend so much time talking about these teams and coming down on them for losing once or twice in a season. Like, what about the kids that don't win at all?
Yeah.
And they go to places and Purdue, although is a tough out at times, gets their head beaten in a lot by the elite teams too. And if you're a really good player on those teams, I would imagine that it wears on you. So the fact that Clemson was able to fill a spot that came open unexpectedly and makes their team better. Like, that's the thing that I was thinking when he was talking, Andy. It's like, Will Helt, if he's an All-American next year and come along with me on this path, they will have discovered or had on their team almost by accident, and then the question is, should Clemson operate that way proactively? Like, that's the thing. It's like, Dabo Swinney's like, well, who do you think I should cut? Well, it's like 2 years ago, your entire receiver room. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to say that.
Well, and a lot of them ended up leaving. Yeah, a lot of them ended up going elsewhere.
The kids that couldn't get open the year that Keon Coleman was terrorizing the ACC, and the one thing that you needed more than anything was somebody who could get open.
How come you didn't say that to him?
That's the thing. What?
How come you didn't say that to him?
I mean, I don't know. I didn't want to be an asshole. Like, I mean, but like, and I actually drove up a pretty hard bargain. But like, that to me, it's like that. That's the answer. So the question is like, yeah, like Dabo has the credentials, and now you're making me feel like a coward. Maybe I am. Maybe we'll have him back on, and I'll tell him.
Oh, we're going to definitely have him back on. That was a fun interview. Like I said, if you get the totality of Dabo, it's very different than getting Dabo through sound bites.
But if you want to have a real discussion or debate, which if you want to invite him back on, I'll have a debate with him. Because, like, you know what? Like, I came down on Brent Venables really, really hard about the no visit policy that he had, right?
Which he got from Dabo.
And I thought it was terrible, right? And I went into to Brent's office and I said, this is awful. Why are you doing this? And we had a spirited debate for 15 minutes about it. And I wrote about it. And I actually came away from the discussion feeling differently. So here's the thing. Do you believe that Clemson, and maybe I'll write about this, that Clemson can win a national title doing it this way? And you know what, with the way that the roster has set up, I guess maybe the answer to that question might be yes. But the thing I don't know is if you take a proactive, sorry, too many medication commercials in the middle of Hulu shows.
Proactive, you've invented a new one.
Yeah. Do your knees hurt?
Do not take Proactive if you are allergic to Proactive.
Take once a day Proactive. May cause inability to sleep, sexual irregularities, and much more. Please call in.
If you have anything for over 4 hours, please contact your physician.
Yeah. Is that does Clemson have to cut players? That's what this comes down to, right? He's talking about who do you want me to get rid of, or we need people to develop, or think people get better, and he's absolutely right. But do you have to rule your program in 2025 in a way where you cut bait with guys that aren't going to be good players? Period. And you have 85 scholarship guys, Dabo. Are all 85 going to be elite players one day? Or do you have to say, hey, you know what? Our receiver room stinks. Take a hike.
Well, that's the thing. And when we have him on next time, I do think you should ask about that, because I'm curious to hear what his answer would be. I did ask
him about it.
Well, I think what his answer would be on that is we can't start cutting people in the way that everybody else is cutting people, because that blows a hole in everything we preached to them when we recruited them.
Exactly.
And it's not the people that you'd be cutting, it's the people that you'd be keeping. And what does that do for your relationship with them?
Yeah. And I understand that. And if you want to do it this way, that's fine. The question is the standard at Clemson being a team that can conceivably win a national championship every year like it was between 2016 and 2020? If that's what you want to be, I have questions, as great of a coach as Dabo Swinney is, about whether or not that's a reasonable thing. So like that, and you know what? I'm wrong all the time. Maybe I'll be wrong. But when other teams that you're playing see weaknesses on their roster, and those weaknesses exist in players who don't want to leave, and then they proactively change those and improve them, those are the teams that have fewer weaknesses on Saturdays. And it might not be nice, and it might not be that warm, cozy, everybody love everybody feeling. But in a world where players are being compensated, and in a world where your job, and here's the number one argument.
Well, the compensation thing is what makes this more fair. Like, if you're compensating someone fairly, you should have a reasonable expectation that they're going to meet a minimum threshold to do the job.
If I stopped coming on the podcast on time,
yeah.
Or I was like, hey, I'm not going to make it this week.
It would be
like,
if you started coming on the podcast on time and then you stopped. I mean, it would just be amazing because you've never actually been on time.
Yeah, that's true. It is true. You know, you guys put me in a bind here with my family life. You know that. I wake up every day at 7 a.m. or 6:30 a.m. a little bit early to make the lunch so I can get out on. We got to leave the house at 7:30.
We just feel like it keeps you sharp, keeps you on edge.
Yeah, like I'm dropping my kid off and walking out of daycare 20 minutes before the show starts, and it's 15 minutes away. Like the fact that I've made it on time at all before is a miracle. Here's the last thing I wanted to say, and this is the point that I've made about Clemson in the past, and I don't know if you agree with it. But if you want to keep that everybody love everybody feeling, and you want to have the retention that you have, then the question becomes, to the players that are very good or good enough, the first round draft picks that you have on your team every year, are you doing those people a disservice by not putting a good enough team around them for them to achieve their goals? Like that's the other thing too. It's like, okay, well, we want to be loyal to people and we want them to be on the team for a long time. That's a very cozy and lovely feeling. And I respect Dabo for wanting that in his program. But if you're a first round draft pick defensive lineman who's beating his head in on every play, and you guys lose to a team that you shouldn't lose to because nobody in the receiver room can get open, and your coach didn't do everything that he could in the offseason in order to address that problem, are you treating the person who's very good wrong? Like that's the question. So it's like, you know, the thing to me is like college football is always about competitiveness. And, you know, how many times have you heard a coach say iron sharpens iron? It's the job's coach to bring iron into the program. And if that there's something weaker,
But here's the thing with Clemson this year. So we've said many times, we think that Ohio State team that just finished winning the national title is the last of that kind of team because of NIL, transfer portal, that it's going to be very hard to stack that level of talent. Clemson, as constructed this year, probably still isn't competing with that team. But like you make Clemson's defense better from last year. Go back to the Texas game. Like their offense was doing fine against Texas's defense, which was a really good defense that Texas had. Their defense was terrible. But let's say Tom Allen makes the big difference on defense. That's a team that should be able to compete with just about anybody. So if they can create a roster doing it the way they want to, they can compete with just about anybody, then we have no leg to stand on. It really is if they can't. And we'll find out. I think this will be a great year to find out. Like, if LSU comes in and completely outclasses Clemson from a personnel standpoint, which I don't think is going to happen, then we have a different discussion. If South Carolina beats them again, we have a different discussion. But
well, this is the discussion, Andy. It's whether or not the sport has changed enough so that the top has come down enough where Clemson can continue to operate this way.
Right.
Because if they operated this way in 2020 over and over again, it's not. Period. Point blank, period. Like if Ohio State from last year exists every year moving forward, it's not enough. But if Ohio State didn't exist last year and Clemson played the field, I mean, hell, even against Texas, the score was close, but you could tell the entire game they weren't going to win.
Right.
Like, that's the question. So, like, but here's the thing. Clemson's going to be better this year than they were last year. Clemson was a year early last year. They returned their entire team. So
and the defense schematically is going to be better. Like, they were not a very well-run defense at all last year. Like he made the Wes Goodwin hire was a mistake. When Brent Venables left, he hired the wrong DC. So if that mistake has been fixed and the roster's better, this is going to be a pretty good team.
Thanks for giving me my column today, by the way. I'm going to lead with being a coward. Appreciate it.
That's a legitimate thing. And I wrote a column about Dabo because, like, in the interview when he says, everybody wants me to be like everybody else, like he says it very calmly, but you can tell it drives him nuts that everybody wants him to do what everybody else does. And he prides himself on doing it the way he thinks it should be done. And he's going to do it that way.
Oh, I just saw the column on the front page of On3. I guess I'm not writing about what I was going to write about today.
You can write about that all you want.
I don't know. We'll see.
I think we'll get a lot out of this particular interview because I had another story idea that spun off of this one as well that you may be seeing sometime next week. Okay. But I'm excited to see what Clemson is this year because I do think they're going to be back. And it's not just, they feel like the best team in the ACC. They'll make the playoff because they'll win the ACC, but they might not be one of the best 4 teams in the country. I think they're back in the mold of this is one of the best rosters in the country.
Yes. Elite level players at important positions, I think is
Correct.
a pretty good way of looking at it.
Yeah. So we will find out, but that was illuminating. And I appreciate Dabo Swinney giving us that much time and really just explaining all that stuff. We have a confirmation that I just received about tomorrow's show. Another coach. A very different conversation is what I'm guessing because this coach is taking a very different tact than Dabo Swinney. It is Texas Tech coach Joey McGuire. Texas Tech, for those who don't know, went all in on the transfer portal this year. They have a mega donor named Cody Campbell who just sold his company for multiple billions of dollars. And he's like, hey, let's go get some better players. Like he was responding to people on Twitter during the season last year saying, we will go get better players. And you know what? They did. They got guys who were in the portal who could have gone anywhere. And a bunch of them went to Texas Tech. So completely different conversation, completely different strategy. I can't wait to hear what Joey McGuire has to say because, listen, just because Dabo does it this way, doesn't, and Dabo said it himself, he's like, this works for us. This might not work for everybody else.
Yeah.
Joey McGuire's in a situation where he's got to do something different.
Definitely multiple ways to approach this. So, yeah, I'm super excited about that. Getting some coaches in. We're getting the offseason. I mean, you gonna ask him if he's seen Landman? Because I am.
We have to, though.
Yeah.
Don't we? I mean, shoot. They filmed part of Landman at a Big 12 track meet.
I'm going to do the interview smoking a cigarette and drinking a Dr. Pepper. So that's what I'm gonna do.
No, you need to drink a Mick Ultra because they're non-alcoholic.
I think so can I ask you a question before this just to prep me for tonight?
But of course.
How different are male cowboy hats from female cowboy hats?
Cowboys know.
Okay, because like my wife has a bunch of cowboy hats because she looks like she grew up everywhere she went. Like, do you think I could pop one of those on? I mean, her head's probably the size of a.
I mean, you could pop one of those on. Real ones would know.
How many, like, what percentage of our listeners do you think can decipher a male and female cowboy hat? Can I go get it real quick? Can you just vamp for 30 seconds?
Yeah, I'll vamp. I cannot wait to see this.
These eyes are never going to see another.
I cannot wait to see this. Nathan says size is different, but the style isn't very different. I think it depends. It depends. I think there's some barrel racing ladies cowboy hats that definitely a little bit different, but I got to see this. I can see this being a disaster in our Joe McGuire interview. I really can. You remember when Ari brought the pack of cigarettes for Kurt Signetti, Coach Sigs with the Sigs. All right, here we go. Let's see. Listen, I'd buy an oil lease from you. That doesn't look like That doesn't look like a lady's hat. That
think
just looks like a cowboy hat.
Male. It doesn't look like a lady's one.
No, this is a cowboy hat.
She's got her. We got some of this branded in here, and we got her initials on the side of it.
There you go.
Just in case you're wondering why we're in credit card debt. I'm going to do the interview with this on, right?
I sure hope so. This is going to be a disaster. I can't wait.
Dude, it's not too late for you to pull the plug on this partnership. Find somebody else. I would understand.
Listen, we're going to talk in like 22 minutes. Joey McGuire tomorrow. We'll talk to you later.